yeah, just relax for a few moments. And I wanted to start with a poem. It's one of my very favorite poems, and it's very appropriate to open this kind of practice, and also very appropriate to close this kind of practice. So yeah, we'll prepare, take a few relaxing breaths. It's called a clear midnight, and I believe it's from Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. I think that's where it's from. I'm not totally sure about that, but it's very beautiful. A clear midnight. This is thy hour, O soul, thy free flight into the wordless, away from books, away from art, the day erased, the lesson done, thee fully forth emerging, silent, gazing, pondering the themes thou lovest best, night, sleep, death, and the stars. And now yoga, our pondering of night, sleep, death, and the stars. So if you have a small bolster, this would be ideal. And mostly for the weight of it, we're going to use the weight into a twist. If not, just get yourself a blanket that has some heft to it, so we can approximate the weight of this. I don't know. This is probably like 8 pounds or something. So what we're going to do is we're just going to weight the twist, the reclining twist, which is lovely, so the legs don't slowly open and relieve the twist, but also the extra weight brings us a little deeper into the threads of the lower back. So what we'll do is just begin like we would any twist, just lie on your back and bring your knees up to your chest. Yeah. And then we want to always try to keep the left shoulder on the floor so we don't compromise the twist in the low back. So have that weight bolster or your hefty blanket nearby. And then we'll just very slowly let both knees go over to the right. So even if you pull them up close to your chest and the legs don't want to touch the floor, that's fine. They don't need to. You can open them a bit if you want that right leg to touch the floor. And then we just take the weight and I just put it right over that top leg, the left leg. So just something like this. So it's just weighted. If the left shoulder has rolled off the floor, you can just relax it back down. You can just let both arms out to the side. And we're going to work on the neck a little bit in this practice. So I'm going to suggest, if you are ready for this, to look over to the left. So both knees going to the right, arms relaxed out to the side, and then just looking over to the left. But don't force that. So you feel this lovely movement from low spine up into the neck. You just let the natural weight of the head draw you to the left a bit. You don't need to try to put the ear on the floor. And we'll settle in here for a bit. One of the things that you can begin to explore in these poses is to slow down your breathing, but to also deepen it. And what I mean by deepen the breath, there's not much effort, but a little effort, is that when you take an inhale, naturally you come to a place of resistance. And this is typically where unconsciously it just falls back down into the exhale. And same thing for the exhale. So to deepen the breath, what I'm suggesting is when you take an inhale and you feel that resistance, lean into it a little bit more. So breathe a little bit longer and a little bit deeper, sort of opening up your capacity. And then be very mindful, be very aware of that breath transitioning. If we can keep some awareness in this transition from the inhale to the exhale, it can be a very spacious time, very spacious place. And then the same thing on the exhalation. There's typically just a very conditioned place. Most of the time we're not aware of it, where that exhale just comes just naturally back into the inhale. The same thing, if you can lengthen it, deepen it just a little bit more, it's going to provide a little resistance, different resistance than the inhale. And the same thing, really see if you can feel, stay present with that place right where the exhale ends and right before the inhale begins, and allow yourself to relax into that spaciousness. So the breath will naturally slow, it will naturally deepen, and your body will naturally respond. And we want to be very kind of, very lighthearted with this. We're not trying to make this into a pranayama or a technique, but just feel your body's natural range of motion or resistance on each end of the breath and lean into it a little bit deeper. Yeah, I think that is a very good suggestion, to be lighthearted with the breath, to bring our attention to the breath, to allow the breath to go a little bit beyond the boundaries that are habitually woven into it, and just feel it. Feel the way that your breath and body respond to each other, and certainly your mind as well. So if you still have that weight on that left leg, let's just remove that weight for a moment, and you can then bring the legs back up, and you can straighten them out. Before we go to, let's not go directly to the other side, we'll just straighten the legs out and just relax. And just feel how your body's just slowly beginning to acclimate to not only slowing down and the deepening of the breath, but also now starting to compress these areas where I'm assuming there's some contraction. And then you can bring the knees back up to the chest when you're ready. And the same thing on the other side, very simple. We'll just bring both knees over to the left. Try to keep the right shoulder down. And whatever you're using for a weight, we'll just weight over this right leg. And then on this side, you can look over to the right. So if you have both arms relaxed to the side, perpendicular from your body. You can just look over to that right hand. So it may not feel like a lot for the neck as we're looking over, but obviously after several minutes, things start to happen. So we want to really, and not only are we in many ways surrendering to gravity in this practice, but we're just surrendering to our conceptual framework of time, that we're not really we're not really timing these, is what I'm trying to say, in terms of how much time and how much benefit and what's correct or what's appropriate. We're really trying to let go of that conceptual framework and feel this sort of inner quality of the atomic vibrations of the body that are much more quantum than linear. The other thing, if you are bringing some attention to your breathing and letting it lengthen and letting it deepen, also a certain gentleness. So when we come upon the restriction, to certainly not push. So we can deepen it and we can lean into that restriction. We can lean into that limit in a very gentle way. Good. So again, if you still have some weight on top of the leg, let's remove the weight. You can bring the legs up, straighten them out, and we'll take a bit of a rest here before we move on. So I just want to, before we go into the next thing, sometimes if I want to explain something, I'd rather do it here than when we're actually doing it. So I'm not in some way distracting you with information and you can more feel into what you're doing. So the next thing what we're going to do is we're going to stretch the ankles a bit. We're just going to do some very light tapping. Tapping really it stimulates the meridians, the nadis, the energy pathways of the body. If you're not familiar with tapping, there's a much sort of deeper practice, but it's very lovely to get in touch, and it helps. The areas will stimulate the immune system, adrenals, a lot of the yin points. But also we're going to do the neck mobility that I have done, and we're going to do it a little slower than usual. And I just want to bring your attention to this relationship between this upper cervical spine that can become, let's say, unstable. We can start to lose the natural curve and the natural mobility of the upper spine. So this in itself affects many things. The thing that I'm bringing our attention to today is the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve coming off the side of the upper cervical spine, it's so incredibly fascinating that this has many things. Just like if we talked about the psoas, we could, have a whole laundry list of consequences of the psoas tightening and misaligning. Well, the same thing here. If our neck mobility becomes compromised and we become overly tight, misaligned, unstable in the cervical spine, it affects the vagus nerve right down to the digestive area. So very often, even if it's very mild to moderate or even severe digestive issues, which are often very tricky to diagnose and to really bring a sense of healing to, have their root up into the cervical spine in relationship to the vagus nerve. So we just want to, no reason to really know that when we're doing it, but we're going to do this neck mobility in a little bit slower way. So let's take the large bolster. And if you don't have a large bolster, just a nice pillow will work great for this. And what I want to do here is I want to do the tapping and the neck mobility by putting the knees up on this. So just the knees, and arching the feet, and we're going to sit on the heels. Yeah. So I understand this is not for everyone. Yes, if you have, especially if you have an injury or you don't have the suppleness in the ankles yet, this may be too much. You could even bring this up a little bit more, but that's not going to really address it. So if at any time this is not accessible to you, instead of releasing and coming back, I'd rather you be able to do the tapping and the neck mobility. So just release it then. Just release it and just sit with that pillow or the bolster under your knees. Yeah, and we can do that. So the priority is the tapping. And I think I won't go on my knees because then you won't be able to really see me. But this is if you're having access to this and your ankles can, let's say, tolerate this with the buttocks onto the heels, the feet arched, no toes curled back. Yeah, so you could move forward a little bit. So even a little bit releases it. But like I said, I'd rather keep our focus more on the tapping and the neck mobility. So then if that's the case, just sit. Yeah, good. So if you have those ankles arched back, we'll begin. So what we're going to do with tapping, it's very light. So don't hurt yourself. We're going to do it with just the 4 fingers. The thumbs are not really involved. And we're going to start with the cheekbone. So right here at this muscle, the upper part of the side part of the cheek, we'll just start tapping. And sometimes it's not in rhythm, but if you relax, it usually entrains and you're tapping equally, which is preferable. So it's just tap, tap, tap on the side of the face, on each side, the cheekbone. And just very, very lightly, try to relax as you're doing it. Feel the stimulation into the fascia of the face. And then we can move right under the eyes. So the bony protrusions right under the eyes. And then from there, we'll move up a bit to the sides of the temple, sort of right above the temple. And then we'll move back to under the eyes. And then down sort of more towards the lower jawbone a bit. So in between the upper jaw and the lower jaw, tap, tap, tap. Good. So let's just for a moment, just let the arms and hands relax. I find if we do the whole thing, the muscles of the arms and the hands fatigue, and we'd rather not put our attention there. So again, we'll go with the 4 fingers, and then we'll go to the clavicle here, these collarbones. Just a light tapping, and feel free. There's no absolute correct spot. You can move around a little bit. Sometimes the body, you'll feel a response, or maybe a little twitch, or feels good or not so good. Maybe a little soreness. So just tap, tap, tap there. That sort of stress through the fingers and the elbows. And then we'll go to the sternum. So right in the middle of the chest, that bone right there, right at the sort of the opening right below where the rib cage would split off to the right and to the left. So we'll just tap there. And then let's not rest this time. Now we'll just go right below the rim of the rib cage. So right under the rib. So to the left, to the right. And this is really lovely for the adrenals. And you could maybe increase the tapping a little bit more since it's a pretty fleshy area, not so much bone. So we're not on the ribs, we're right below them, tapping up into those torso organs. Good. And if you were doing this by yourself, you could go back through it. You could go now back up to the sternum, the clavicles, the cheekbones, the temple, the base of the eyes there. But we'll just stop with this. It's just a back and forth movement. But what I would like to do, so we'll sit now. So, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I was sitting, so I forgot you have your ankles. So let's release the ankles. If you still are stretching the ankles back, yeah. I don't want to keep you there. Yeah, so for the neck mobility, I mean, if you wanted to stay with the ankles, you could, but I would just release them now. So just come forward, release them, and let's sit. So now we can put our full focus into the neck mobility. So what I would like you to do then, if you're not already sitting with the bolster or the pillow under the knees, and then let the spine just naturally elongate and relax. We'll want the bottom of the chin parallel to the floor, feeling the head a little light off the shoulders. And what I would like to do is we're going to bring the left chin to the left shoulder and hold it for 1, 2, 3, and really lean into it, and then bring the chin over the right shoulder. And again, just hold it there, sort of pressing and leaning into it. For 2 or 3 or 4 beats, and really, really feel what is there. Discomfort, tightness, achiness, numbness. So back and forth, but we're doing a relatively long pause at the end here. And again, this upper spine, you see 1, 2, 3 even, it becomes unstable, misaligned, it begins to lose the natural curve. It's going to affect, compress, contract the vagus nerve way up here, and it does affect your digestive system. So this is really just the tip of the iceberg, this neck mobility. This is a lovely thing to, really make this connection with neck tension, limited range of motion in your neck, on, and what might be going on in your gut. Good. So wherever you're at, let's come back to straight spine, bottom of the chin parallel to the floor. And this time we're going to drop the chin down. So looking down, chin down, and we'll that you're dropping the head into the weight of the base of the spine, that you're pulling that base of the spine up. So there's a pulling up, and then you've been there a while, so we'll just keep, again, move at your own pace. Chin down, relax and feel into it, and really take advantage of this pace so you can really feel the nuance of what's going on in this upper spine. So many things affect this, this area from becoming congested and unstable. Never forcing, really just using gravity and the weight of the skull. And then let's come to a neutral place once again with a straight spine. And this time we're going to bring the right ear to the right shoulder. But again, we're not thinking of the weight of the skull pulling us into this right side of the neck, but more the left ear is more pulling up as the head flexes over to the left, and then just feel it. And obviously there's just, for most of us, I would say really all of us, there's so much going on in this area that we wouldn't even want to start to diagnose or, superimpose anything onto it. Just really feel it. Just check in. Does it feel contracted and tight and tentative? Or is there an openness to this area of the body? Just be curious and really be patient with this part of the body. And always good to make mental notes, or maybe areas that you want to go back and really explore and take more time with. Roll it if you like, or just now a little bit quicker, just to sort of feel that the difference between the slow, concentrated, deeper movement, and now just the sort of the quality of your neck mobility. And just another reminder, make a mental note how important this area is. Again, just like the psoas and the pelvis, we could just go on and on about the vagus nerve, but we'll just feel it here in the depth of the belly and the dark, mysterious corridors of digestion. Good. So coming back, straight spine, please. Something under the knees, soles of the feet together. And let's come forward now in just a very slow, luxurious forward bend. The benefit of having this knee support is that everything is going to get concentrated into the lumbar. Don't be in a rush. If you need something up front, you can pile a couple of blankets or a bolster on your feet and rest your arms a little higher so weight of the head draw you into the upper spine. So this truly becomes uh, a forward bend from, cervical spine to sacral spine. And also notice how you can go between bringing a certain attention to your breathing, as I was suggesting earlier, but also just completely forgetting about your breath and just really trusting that the body and the posture will guide you to just how you need to be breathing. So we don't want to, to turn this into a certain kind of format where really, looking at our experience in a very multi-dimensional and layered way. So how is it feeling? What's being evoked? How am I responding? What am I not feeling? What am I ignoring? What needs attention? There's just many, many ways to spend the time in an asana, especially when we encourage and cultivate a certain slowness and an inner quietness. And if you really think about it, this multi-dimensional aspect of just being human, just being in a simple yoga pose is really quite astounding. We can go from an exploration of something that just feels just a little off or a little contracted in the body and really drop into that and or just the nature of who we are, the nature of ourself. And so is it exploration of the body, feelings, emotions, the mind? And so if we're exploring the mind, particularly if we're exploring our thoughts, if we're exploring this question of who am I, so we, just as everything, we're opening space, we're slowing down, we're just cultivating a very natural self-inquiry. But we want to remember that no thought can ever tell you who you are. No collection of thoughts, no one else's opinion, no belief system, no theology, no mysticism because those are all based on thoughts. No thought can ever tell you who you are because you're not a thought. You are, we are a mystery. And this is the invitation of yoga, is to be able to sit with, to really feel this sense that whether I am using the label body or mind or heart or spirit, it's the essence of it is mysterious. And certainly the thoughts will try to convince you otherwise. That's perfectly fine. This is what they do. It can be very entertaining, and they can also be very informative and useful. But when we sit with the ground of being, when we sit with our essentialness, we sit with the awareness that is impersonal, then no thought can tell us who we are. We're not a thought. We are this mystery. So let's come on up here nice and slowly and see if you can feel the movement along your spine. I was saying in the last class, it's not straight, it's not stationary, it's undulating, it's moving, and we want to feel that. So let's just sit with that for a moment, and maybe again let the head have some movement, maybe even let the hips have some movement, and just feel that this sort of this undulation of the spine, which is just really, really so incredibly important to our overall health. And then from here, we can straighten the legs, remove the bolstering, and let's lie down and we'll take a rest here. And I do think this is often where we, especially as yogis, or if whatever type of long and winding road we happen to find ourselves on, that to find a balance between this thinking part of us, this intellect part of us that wants nothing more to figure out the mystery. So this is a lovely hobby that the thoughts can have, that the brain can have. Let it do that. It can be so entertaining and interesting. But at the same time, the intuitive part of us really, I don't even want to say understands, but the intuitive part of us naturally intuits that the mystery is not meant to be understood at that level. The mystery is meant to be enjoyed. The mystery is liberating. The mystery is a sense of freedom. And so this is an essential balance. We could call it yin and yang. We could call it the masculine and the feminine, or the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. But this is just it's very much like breathing. We can contract into the thoughts, and we can use them to dissect the mystery. And then we can expand out of that contraction and just enjoy the open-endedness, if you will, of the mystery, the way that the mystery of life is always surprising us. Okay, so let's come on up then, please. You may want to have some support we're going to begin by extending let's extend the left leg out front. And then we're going to take the right leg and put it up and over and just bring that right foot back towards the left hip here. And then if you are going to use some support, I'm going to suggest to put it onto the left side here. So left leg out, right leg up and over, foot a little bit back. And then the reason the support's on the left side is because I'm going to invite us, as you're starting to come forward, really explore your upper body weight and lean a little bit over to the left with this. We're not going to make it like a deep twist, but just to kind of feel the strands of that right lower back and how they're pulling. So kind of let that resistance settle you into a depth that you feel like, oh yeah, I can explore here. And so obviously the support is so all of these shoulders and the head weight doesn't pull us too deeply. I have my forearms here so I can withdraw a little bit. I can lessen the twist. I can just really control the depth. So I'm always at this appropriate place where I'm compressing and feeling and exploring and not having to deal with my body going into any sort of clenching or bracing. If there's a little bit of holding in the neck, explore dropping that head down a little bit more. You want to feel that weight compress right into the very, very top of the spine. Good. So if you're over to the left a little, it's always best to come back to a straight spine before we roll up. So let's do that now. We'll just roll up from here. And then one very simple little switch from here is we're going to keep the left leg exactly where it is, but we'll take that right leg and just place the sole of that right foot somewhere along the inside of this left leg. So I'm putting it pretty low here. I put it different places, different times. We want the knee to be as relaxed and the hip to be as relaxed as possible. And then again, we'll come forward. Yep. And same thing with the leeway. Sway a little bit coming down, feel the threads of tightness wherever you're feeling them. Use whatever support you need to make sure you're really able to maintain a safe and a still position over time. One of the discernments that is very interesting to explore, especially from a body work perspective. So when we're working with the body, and especially in an approach like this, where we're allowing ourselves the freedom to, really just loosen up the frameworks of language. It's not that necessary. It's just a limited convenience that we use. But to talk about the brain, we also have to talk about the soma, the internal workings of the body. So the soma, at a very, very functional level, is brain. The brain is not just this left-right hemisphere encased in the skull. The brain is throughout the entire body. The soma, again, functionally and genuinely, and I'm saying literally, is brain. The mind is the field of mental images. And so this becomes an interesting distinction, because if we get caught up in and stay within the mind, the field of mental images, then we are simply conceptualizing the body, not fully embodying. So I mentioned the vagus nerve and its relationship to the gut. So this relationship between upper cervical spine and the gut is a primary relationship of intelligence. Same thing with the respiratory diaphragm, same thing with the psoas. The soma is brain. The soma is intelligence. This intelligence is reverberates throughout every cell in your body. It's incredibly intelligent. The mind, we could say it's intelligence, maybe it's a different intelligence, is the stored knowledge, our capacity to creatively visualize, hold information, be logical, and on and on. Good, so let's come on up from here and let's straighten up that right leg and let's lie down and take a rest. since we really did two forward bends there. So we'll take a little rest here. So does this have any, application, this this somatic intelligence of the whole body, the soma as brain, and the mind as a field of mental imagery? Well, I believe that it does. And what I think we can begin to explore, because this whole practice, yes, the whole of yoga is based on contracting and expanding. So what we can begin to look at, and we can broaden what we can accept as a contraction. So a contraction is just an energetic pulling in. And this can be a physical bracing. This can be something from repetitive motion or anything, diet, aging. This can also be a heaviness in the heart, the physicality at the level of emotions. We start to contract. This can also be the way that we're thinking. It can be irritation. It can be anger. We contract. So if we go to the mental images, yes, if we go to the mind as a field of mental imagery, we're going to try to deal with our contractions at that layer. And this is typically when we project the contraction outward. We project it onto a circumstance, a relationship, a person, an event. So it does very little ultimately to release the contraction. What we're more interested is to, first of all, have the ability and the wisdom and the safety to feel the contraction. Okay, I'm contracting. And then be able to not project, bring the attention inward and see that, this contraction is nothing to do with that person, relationship, or circumstance. And then we go deeper. Does it have a historical root? Oh, my mother, my father. Okay, we can feel that. No, not really. No, deeper, 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 till finally we see that it is just a contraction of energy. It is a primal contraction that got triggered somehow by the external. Happens all the time. It's happening all day long. So we can either have this incredibly wise body approach to feel it, allow ourselves to permeate into it, see that it is not connected ultimately to the trigger, and then allow it to breathe and release and feel safe and open. So we stay at the level of the mind with it. That's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing. I won't go into the therapeutics of it. We're talking about the intelligence of feeling the contraction, going through the layers of the contraction to see that it's this primal contraction. And then, this openness, this expansion. And we get to the place where we can find balance between this that's not contingent upon external events. This is extremely liberating. Okay, let's come on up and let's do the other side. So let's extend the right leg out this time. We'll bring that left leg up and over. And again, not to force that foot, but just so you'll feel this left hip respond. So obviously this time we would put our support on the right side. And then the same thing, we're going to relax forward, feel the weight of the shoulders, let gravity start to take over, but we can control it. We'll just slide over to the right a little bit. Find where those threads are, letting us know there's resistance, range of motion, contraction, and then we'll just relax into it.
making sure the shoulders are relaxed. The weight of the head can draw you into the upper spine. So whatever the tension, whatever the resistance, we're always and only simply relaxing into it, softening. And if you're off to the right, let's come over to a straight spine first. This is always good to do. And then we'll just roll up, feeling some space between the vertebra if we can. And then we'll release this left leg and place it somewhere on the inside of the right leg and let that left knee relax down. And we'll continue our forward bend. And this is a very, very powerful inquiry that I'm suggesting here, exploring the nature of our contractions. The exploration is to be able to experience this. Is must be experiential. This is must be self-evident. This is not a theory. We want to experience this. So the inquiry, the exploration, is to see that at the level of our energy, that it is simply this open energy that has become contracted. But at its core, there's nothing there. There's not a person there irritating us. There's not a situation there making us afraid. There's not a selection of choices that we may make the wrong choice. There's not a polarity between am I worthy, am I unworthy. There's simply energy. And ultimately nothing there. It's simply this wild free energy that went from expansion and openness to contraction. And this is where we release. This is where we observe. This is where we become free. And like I was saying earlier, this nothingness of life, this nothingness of this energy that appears to contract and expand, when we start to superimpose thoughts on it, this then gives us the false belief that we are the thought. As I was saying earlier, no thought can tell us who we are because it's just a mystery. This energy is mysterious. This aliveness is mysterious. So it's this pulling and contracting, sense of self, sense of body, sense of mind, sense of world, and then this energy expanding, sense of freedom, sense of awareness, sense of beingness, sense of essence, sense of enlightenment. It's breathing. The cosmos is breathing, your tissues are breathing. And this is why the heart of yoga is the breath. We just keep coming back to the breath, feeling that contraction and expansion in the breath. It's a primary metaphor for every layer of our existence.
Okay, so let's come on up from here, please. And let's straighten out that leg. And let's take another rest. And then certainly, part of our exploration when we come into the physical body in this way is we get to explore, do we have unresolved contractions? And oftentimes we go through this process, this layering process. I'm not suggesting we go right to this energetic level. I'm suggesting we be incredibly honest and clear about how we are experiencing the contraction. So if we believe it is this, if we believe it is that, this is where we begin. And then we go into the texture and the structure and the nature of what it is we believe it to be. And we relax from that. And then we come to another layer and we draw the residue of the contraction away from that till we get to this place of like, oh, I'm just feeling this vibration. I'm just feeling this movement. I'm feeling this energy that I don't have to then name, define, hold on to. I think I said something in the last class about that the discomfort that we're feeling, go back in time with it. Allow yourself the freedom to see that most of what we're feeling in this physicality, viscerally, is not current. Sometimes it is. We have a certain kind of day and we're feeling the stress of the day, but we have incredible capacity to imprint, really old holdings in the body, these imprints that get woven into the very, not simply the joints and the muscles and the fascia, but the tissues and the cells themselves. And this is not even necessarily, or maybe it's apparent, this is not linear. The place that you live in your soma, this is not a linear mechanism. This is basically encoded fields of information at this vibratory level. So just as we can physically contract and this feels tight, the way that the information and the connectivity of the body is, those processes can also contract. So we can get stuck in a place in time or a repetitive thought or a way of being or a belief system that's just as potent a contraction as that lower back that hurts. Okay, so let's come on up. And what I would like you to do, if you do not have a small bolster, please get 2 blankets. But I think most of you have the small bolster, or hopefully. So what I want to do is we're going to roll up one of the blankets, unless you're using 2 blankets, and roll up both of them. But I want to have one blanket, the one that we're going to sit in front of, that's going to be closer to your lower back, a little bit higher than the second roll or this bolster. So as you can see, if you can't see, I'll just tell you, I've put the bolster behind the blanket. I've rolled the blanket up a little bit higher, not much, maybe a couple of inches higher than the bolster itself. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit in front of it. Yeah, I'm going to keep the buttocks on the floor, sit in front of it. So if you, again, if you have the second, if you're using a second roll, just make it a little bit lower than the first roll. So we mostly want to get the compression in the lower back. And then that secondary support is going to kind of pull the mid back a bit. So sit in front of it, keep the buttocks on the floor, keep the feet on the floor, and just work your way slowly to your forearms first, check in. And anywhere along the way, you may discern like, nope, this first roll is too much. I want to unroll it. You may feel like, oh, I could roll it up a little more. I'm not feeling so much. Your choice and your discernment. So keep the feet on the floor until the back of the head is on the floor. Yeah, if you need a little something, this is too much pillow, really. Don't use this much. Well, no, this is fine. It's because I can keep my chin above my forehead. Once the upper body is stable, the neck feels safe, the head's supported, you're good in that lower mid back, then you can let the legs relax out. Yeah, and it may take a while. Obviously, it's going to need to acclimate if it starts to brace a little bit, put the feet back on the floor, maybe raise the hips. So take whatever time you need to feel like this is the appropriate depth. May or may not be. It's hard to say. It's funny because when we were in person, one of the things that I could look at very easily is, people grimacing or making faces, and I would immediately know we needed to work with the depth. But I don't have that. I don't have that luxury to see your lovely grimacing faces anymore. So we have to make do with verbal contact. And I think if we do have to have a linguistic background, that the visuals of energy, of this wild, free energy that has this amazing capacity to contract and expand, is really a good one, because ultimately we want our yoga to be a very textural exploration.
We don't want it to be based on, clear-cut dimensions or ideas or definitions. We want to take a rest from that, and whatever it is that is arising in our awareness, to see what is the very texture of it, what is the structure of it. So it's our ability to really spend some time with this container of this non-verbal way to experience. And really, this is going on all the time. We just have so much chatter. The internal dialogue is so habitual and so noisy. So to start to just turn that down a bit, allow ourselves just to see that, yes, we have this incredible nonverbal experience going on, and to honor that. And then our exploration gets just very, very personal and intimate, and where just we're experiencing our experience as it is, with less and less overlays, with less and less superimpositions, with less and less habit, with less and less reactivity. So a bit of a transition here. We're going to stay in this area for a while longer, but what I would like to do is just put your feet back on the floor and just allow your body to slide back. So we're going to come out of the lumbar and onto the pelvis. So you can just come to that first roll, or probably they'll be on both of them. Just as long as we come out of the lumbar, we sliding the body back, feeling the support now up onto the pelvis, the release of the lumbar, and then we'll bring the attention into the pelvic area. And then again, very good to relax the legs out. So this is now this is going to pull on the psoas a bit. And then make any adjustments you need, and we'll stay here for a while. I was talking before class about the importance of the the internal hydration of the body. So this is at the level of the ground substance of the body, where all the cells and the tissues live, the fluids, the microtubules of fascia. So certainly this rehydrating the system at this level has a physical benefit because we feel more supple. This is what suppleness is. So it's a mistaken belief to think if we're just stretching the muscles, we're creating a supple body. That's a limited view of yoga. We need to open up these fascial pathways. We need to have the ground substances of the body, the fluid sense of the body open. And this is what the compression and the release on a physical level does. But in addition, and just as important, is that we're also opening the pathways for this encoded information to travel. So when we get down to experiencing our body as this energy that contracts and expands, another word for this energy is information. And this information is encoded in these fields throughout the body. It's like these atomic vibrations of the body. And for us to be healthy, for us to be in a very deep sense of well-being, to us to have a system, an organism that can heal itself, the fluids need to transmit this vibratory transmission through the fluids of the body. So the information can travel. So the body can communicate. This is the connectivity of these encoded informational fields. Because most of the healing that has taken place is well below our conscious level. It's just the intelligence of the body. But we need the body to be fluid. We need this inner ocean to have a sense of flow.
So before we come out of this, if you could just simply bring the soles of your feet together. Well, not come out, we're going to shift again, but if you could just draw your legs up and put the soles of the feet together. So we still have your bolstering under the pelvis. We haven't slipped to the lower back yet, and wherever feels comfortable, just bring them so you feel. I just want to dip into the hips a little bit. So we'll let both knees relax to the side, the soles of the feet together. And you can even sway a little bit if you would like to just have a little bit of movement. Two things you could do. You could just sort of bring the knees up and down a little bit, back and forth. Or one of the nice things to do sometimes to release, to work into the psoas, is to keep the soles of the feet together. Bring both knees up a few inches, like they're going to touch, but they're far from that. So just maybe 3 or 4 inches. Just hold them there for a bit. You may feel a little quivering in the pelvis or the hips. This is good. And then let them relax back down. So that psoas certainly, coming off the lumbar, traveling down over the top of the hips and connecting in the upper part of the thigh there, the back of the leg. This weight now of the knees just kind of coming up, and you're just holding it, sort of holding the knees, and the weight of that quivers a bit and vibrates up into the hips and through the psoas, and then you let that relax back down. So we'll just do this for a little bit. And you can feel also that pelvic bowl releasing and pulling and releasing and pulling. Such a incredibly ligamented area of the body. Good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the feet back on the floor, and now we're going to slide back down into the lumbar. Thought we were done with that, but not quite. So you just want to get the buttocks back on the floor,
You can reassess here if this height is still okay. So after the first time, it may be perfect. You may need to release it a little bit, go lower. You may want to go higher. So when you've made that assessment and made any adjustments you need, we'll let the legs relax out. And so now we're out of the pelvis, back down into the lumbar, buttocks is on the floor. Allowing your breath to soften, allowing your breath to slow down, and allowing the breath to deepen, finding that place where it just starts to resist and leaning into it just a little bit more. Feeling the incredible array of micro movement as you breathe into the bones and the joints and the organs and the tissues. And really allowing yourself to appreciate how incredibly sensitive and nuanced this body is that we have. So we're gonna make this transition just one more time. So if you're still in this lovely backward bend, let's put the feet on the floor and again, elevate the hips and slide the body back. So we'll get back into the pelvis. Yeah. Good. So a couple of things here. I'd just like you to take this time, since we've been here before, is just decide what's good. You could just relax the legs back out and rest back into stillness. It's again a lovely way and place to explore your body. The sort of root of just a lot of peripheral tension that settles into the sacral pelvic area. You could bring the soles of the feet back together and, like I was suggesting earlier, bring the knees up and let them quiver a bit and relax them back down. Slower is better here. You could start the process of bringing one knee up, the other knee, both knees up, and just really sort of use the blanket bolster as a little massage and sway the hips and just kind of play with this. So we'll just take a few more minutes and be here and just kind of move or not as feels appropriate to this pelvic area. The most ligamented part of your body right here. So that's what I was saying, is a lot of tension that we think is peripheral and it's about this or that has extremely deep roots in these ligaments of the pelvis. Especially the female pelvis is more ligamented than the male pelvis. So we have this sacral tightness in the pelvic area, the depth of the lumbar setting in the sacrum, and then up to the lower back. So yeah, it's complicated down there. And then when you're ready to release it, let's begin to release it in any way that feels safe, just rolling off or just pulling the bolsters out from under you, whatever works. And again, we'll take another rest here. More and more, I'm just coming to, well, two things. You're coming to really reducing my own practices to just as much simplicity as possible, and feeling the richness and the flow that simplicity can bring, and that most of the complications that have come my way have been self-initiated. It's such an interesting thing to see, and that really the only mantra is the present moment, and how to feel that, we have this amazing, complicated, complex, big brains that love to recollect and project, and it can just be exhausting, really. I think a lot of our exhaustion comes from not just having the simplicity of and the beauty of how this moment is unfolding, without having to figure something out or get somewhere or make it better. One of the things that I've been exploring for a while is that the need to purify, the need to seek and purify and become better, whether it's physically or mentally, or especially spiritually, the need to think I'm going to have some sort of purification, and then I will have the right state. the right relationship to the moment, has very, very deep roots in feeling unworthy. And so we get to explore that at this energetic level, at this level where aliveness is always just unfolding, the mantra of the present moment, that it's a recollection or it's a projection. That aliveness, energy, consciousness, call it whatever, has no framework for unworthiness. So I think at some point the maturing process is to see that we're very clever at setting traps for ourselves and then trying to undo those traps. So better not to set the traps in the first place and just let our life unfold in this intelligent simplicity. And the really beautiful thing about it is, so we could take this as theory, or we could have opinions about all of this, but the truth is that life itself is constantly giving us feedback. So if we're getting feedback that feels contracted and out of balance and not in a sense of equilibrium and on and on and on, then we get to make corrections. If we're getting feedback that allows us this sitting in equilibrium, in feeling the support of life, the health of life, the growth of life, then that's all we need. So we want to, or I'm saying that this is what has become very positive for me, is to stay very close to that life itself becomes the primary teacher, because it's so incredibly powerful at giving us moment to moment to moment feedback. And we can use that to guide us in whatever endeavor, from what we're eating, what we're feeling, how we're speaking, to our loftiest spiritual aspirations. So let's come on up from resting, and I want to kind of come a bit full circle here, especially after that backward bend. So we did this forward bend earlier with the bolster under the knees or the pillow under the knees. Your choice, however, you can do this again with this. We'll do it about the same amount of time, which is relatively lengthy. Or if you'd like to bring the hips and the knees into it, do it without it. So your choice. And then at the end, we're going to open it up and just get behind the legs a little bit as well. So your choice to do it supported or not. We'll bring the soles of the feet together and take your time, though. Feel that backward bend still there a bit. So we're energetically kind of undoing not just energetically, also physically, obviously, the backward bend now, taking it back to the forward bend. The only mantra is the present moment. And the separation is the only illusion. And just going back to, where we opened, what I was saying earlier, that no thought can ever tell you who you are because you are not a thought. So it's the same thing with this quality of simplicity. It is only a thought that will attempt to complicate that, because this is its function. Its function is to be logical and analytical, yes, but it also loves to create these linguistic and these semantic and these conceptual spider webs. So then it has something to do, and it convinces us it's complicated. It convinces us we need to do something. And just as I was saying, this is a textural exploration. The same thing with these thoughts. We can go into them. We can tease them apart. We can see what is a thought, because we know somatically, physiologically, a thought is only simply electricity. It's a spark, and it's a mixture of chemicals. That's all a thought is. So if we build this edifice of complexity, then we can dismantle that edifice. And this simplicity is, in many ways, another way of talking about the mystery. Because obviously, we look deep into our own physical body, we look far, far out into the cosmos, and there certainly is this pulsation between utter simplicity and extreme complexity. But again, that's the contraction and expansion. It's very beautiful. It's very beautiful to look out at the night sky and just see, like, it's just stars twinkling. It's so simple. It's so beautiful. You start to cry. But then you look a little deeper, and there's this complexity of the cosmos that's overwhelming. The same thing with your body. You can feel your heart pulsating, and oh my God, that is so beautiful. You cannot get closer to yourself than that. It's so incredibly simple. But at the same time, there's a complexity of organic relationships that's beyond really something that we can really apprehend. So let's come on up from this lovely forward bend. And if you have the bolster under your knees, let's remove it. And I just want to end that forward bend by opening the legs out just a little past hip width, just so the quadriceps don't get in the way of the abdomen, and you can relax between the legs. And use the bolster if you need to, yes. So support yourself, obviously. Try to keep the back a little rounded and soft. So that basically the same forward bend from sitting up, and now just let the whole body fold forward and just feel what's going on
really from your ankles through your calves, the back of the knees, and all the way up into the buttocks. This is a lovely, just very, very good compression to apply on a regular basis. So let's roll up from here. And you can lie down and take a rest. And we'll take some time to move into our closing stillness. So just make yourself comfortable. A clear midnight. This is thy hour, O soul, thy free flight into the wordless, away from books, away from art, the day erased, the lesson done, the fully forth emerging, silent, gazing, pondering the themes thou lovest best, night, sleep, death, and the stars. Namaste.